Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where we talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Coroner. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. This was actually kind of a different case than we normally get, because obviously it's the whole thing of like, well, figuring out who done it, and it's one of those interesting situations where we already know who done it, but obviously it's just the way this episode kind of unveiled itself. Obviously the whole thing with Harold is actually a really sad story, and I think what made this story even sadder for me is because the actor who plays Harold looks so much like my grandfather, like my dad's dad, that, just the fro, the mustache, same complexion. It was just kind of a little trippy to see that, and I was like, I think that's what made it even sadder for me. But I mean, it's just a very tragic episode, because like at first it's like he killed a dude named Jason who was kind of like a real estate dude or whatever, and then it's like he put the body up at a bench right beside the a bench that was like advertising said dude, like, so it ends up being this thing, because obviously Malik is the one kind of like asking questions. The guy, I thought it was crazy, because like the moment Malik starts showing up asking questions, Harold's like, oh, my chest. He's like, oh, and he's reaching for the shovel. Luckily, Malik pulled out his badges like, I am the police. And then immediately Harold stopped and was kind of like, you almost gave him this look like, you bastard. Oh, you lucky you're a cop, or I would have smashed your head in or something. It's like, it's crazy. But it's a very clear, open and shut case from not just from the perspective of us as the audience, knowing that Harold did it, but all the evidence and stuff like that. Because we end up finding out, like, the reason why Harold did it is because it's like, yeah, because my wife, I didn't want him to disturb her. It turns out his wife is dead. She has been dead for the past 8 years, because when he was disposing, because obviously, like, we saw at the beginning of the episode, she was asking, Harold for a sandwich, and it's like, now we know, like, that was all in his head, because she's been dead, because they end up finding out later on, because, like, the condition her body's in and everything, she was dead for 8 years. But for him, it's like, I told the dude to leave. I mean, from what we saw in the flashback, he didn't necessarily, I mean, he did, but it was just kind of like immediately like, oh, the guy's like, oh, something's wrong with you. He's like, oh, you having a heart attack or something? He's like, I'm gonna call somebody. But like, he ended up killing him, because now the whole question is like, well, did he kill him because he's trying to cover up the fact that his wife's dead, that maybe he's the one responsible for it? And by that, I mean that, they're wondering whether or not Harold's the one that killed his wife. Obviously, he doesn't think she's dead. Like, it's not like he's like, oh, I'm trying to cover it up. It's like, in his mind, it's like, oh, you're trying to disturb my wife, so that's why he killed Jason. And I thought that was so interesting, because it's like, you're thinking like, oh, maybe he did something shitty. Like, you thought maybe it had something to, I mean, he was just so gung-ho about getting the job done because he loves the job. So, he's just kind of like, oh, yeah, this house. Oh, so it's like history. So he was trying to do everything he can to be like, oh, my God, like the state of this house and stuff like that. It's beautiful. Like, he was so focused. He's so into his job that it led to that situation. It was just a terrible situation. It's not like he deserved it. He didn't do anything bad. It's just a terrible, situation, because sadly, Harold just wasn't in the right mindset. And what complicates things even more with this whole situation is like, obviously, could we end up finding out like, oh, he has a son and everything, but his son left like 32 years ago, because he says that his dad's eccentric, that basically he's kind of in denial. Like, oh, my dad found out I was gay. He basically was like, oh, look, he was calm, but then he tried hooking me up with like church girls or something like that. And then when I got HIV, and it's just like, my dad gave me like some Tylenol and it's ibuprofen or something like that, and milk. So it's just like, he ended up leaving, and he hasn't really been back, and it's just, he doesn't believe his dad would have killed his mom. But it's just like, obviously the thing of like, everyone's trying to understand what went down, and it's like, well, there's not enough. I mean, it's been so long, the condition her body's in, there's just no telling, because based on what they could tell from the body, from what they could examine, it's like no broken bones, no signs of like strangulation. So it doesn't seem like she was murdered, but it's like, what happened, What's even interesting, because Jenny had that whole conversation with Allison of like, how did no one know? Then, no neighbors are like, oh, you got the wrong mail. Like, obviously flies you would have smelled it or something. And Jenny's talking about the fact this is just kind of messed up that like she died and just like no one knew. But I guess there's also, because sadly it's a situation that comes up from time to time, I guess, like randomly in the news, you hear about like, oh yeah, like someone, because like someone didn't have someone checking in on them, so somebody's body might go like forever up. I mean, especially because that's why he ended up killing Jason, because he didn't want any police showing up disturbing his wife, because it's almost like he's trapped in his fantasy, like his wife is still alive, and any attempts to break that fantasy, he kind of went on the defensive. It's like, I'm defending my wife, you're disturbing her, I told you to leave and you didn't. But it's also like, in his own delusional way, it's like he's like, his mind is trying to protect the delusion, to a certain extent. But obviously, like, he didn't want to accept the fact is that his wife was gone. He kept being like, no, she's here and everything. But then, like, later on, when they take him back to the house, they end up finding out that she, like, basically the way he was explaining it was basically she got these headaches. She went to a different doctor because their doctor they were going to before had retired, and this doctor had given her glasses. But then it turns out, the headaches got worse, and then she kind of fly out the hand. But then Jenny basically kind of diagnoses that she probably had a tumor. And, it's like, because obviously for her, it's like she wants to try and find out who this doctor was, because it's like, if she was, diagnosed properly, she'd still be alive, be here with him. She didn't say it, but I think maybe there's some part of her that's like, obviously her own particular situation, whole thing with David. Like, I'm sure it's a little reminiscent. It's a different situation, but it's like, he fell into this whole thing because he was so madly in love with her that he didn't want to let go. And even like, because they give him a psyche eval, it's like his situation is so unique, but obviously it's like he's cognizant enough to know why he killed Jason. So it's not like, it's like, because once again, they're still looking at it, maybe he killed his wife and maybe he killed Jason to cover up the fact is he didn't want anyone to know. But it's like, so they were even suggesting like him going to trial and stuff like that. But then it's like, the son Damon was kind of like, no, you can't do that. Which, side note, I've seen the actor who plays their son Damon. I've seen him in so many things. There's something super recent I've seen him in that I can't place it. I think there was a long-running TV show or something I've seen him in that I just can't place. I've seen him in so much stuff. I just can't place what the most recent thing was I'd seen him in. It bothers the hell out of me. But nevertheless, it's just, like I said, just overall, like the story is just sad, especially at the end too, because it's like, especially now that he's kind of realized everything and it's hitting him, and then it seems like he dies at the end, because it seems like it's almost like this delusion, like believing his wife is still alive, like that's the only thing that kept him going after she died. And it's like the moment he found out she was gone, it's like he died of a broken heart. He's even saying like, telling his son like I love you, and then dies. It's like, you're back in your father's life after all of these years. You got a family of your own, and it's sad. It's that sad situation of like, maybe, Damon's probably going to have those regrets of like, maybe if I'd come back sooner, like maybe things could have been different. Maybe I could have done something different. I could have helped him through this. It's just a very tragic and sad situation. It's just kind of like it just leaves this heaviness on you. Once again, like I said, I think once again, because the actor looks so much like my grandfather, it just makes it even sadder for me, but kind of getting away a little bit from those sadder angles to it. Obviously, there's a whole thing with Jenny. She's sleepwalking. Well, in this particular episode, sleep digging. And then Ross is outside like, wait, what? And Liam's like, okay, there was the whole myth of not disturbing someone, and obviously it's the whole thing of like, now this is Ross, first experience of this because he didn't know this was going down. Liam's like, all right, Ross, I need you have night duty. He's like, I gotta work. But she's like, I don't need to be watched. But obviously for Liam, it's like, no, I was going to go see Mal, but I'm going to come back tonight. She's like, no, the surgery he's going through and everything, you need to be there for him and everything. So obviously Liam's worried about Jenny. So I thought that was just kind of like, this interesting aspect of things. Then there's also partway through this case, Jenny gets a call from Kelly, and I wasn't expecting like her to kind of pop up again. And it's like, obviously, because Jenny earlier in the episode saw that the building that she lived in that was burnt down, they're building new condos on top of it. So it's kind of like, that place was a death trap. People died there, and just like, just gonna bulldoze it away and build something on top of it. And Donovan's like, oh, that's Toronto for you. That's kind of sad situation. And obviously she ends up, because she mainly wanted to check on Kelly because she wanted to see how Kelly was, but Kelly was like, yeah, like that place is kind of a reminder it's better to just bulldoze and get rid of all those bad memories. So Jenny's like, all right, you want to do my nails, you can, because I think she was afraid to kind of leave Kelly alone right then. And it's like, I lost my sister, and it's like, I know it can't compare, but it's like, Kelly was immediately like, you understand. And, you know, Jenny was kind of nodding along. But then, like, all of a sudden, like, Jenny was asleep, and Kelly's at her place, and Jenny's sleeping on her, and Ross is like, hey, she's like, hey, yeah, your mom, she fell asleep on me, and it's like, who are you? It's like, oh, I'm Kelly. And I was like, okay, this is it. And then, like, her and Ross are talking while Jenny's asleep. My immediate thought, I think this is going to be interesting, because you could look at this whole Kelly thing as, oh, you could look at it beautifully. My mind, the entire episode, I was like, oh, this is going to turn into, it's going to get a little twisted, isn't it? Because to me, it feels like, you know, and this is just my perspective. Like I said, I'm coming at it from a very pessimistic standpoint. I feel like Kelly is latching on to, she's latching on to Jenny. Especially because it's like, oh, you've got a son, you got this life, like, you know, especially with everything going on with Kelly and just trying to escape. It's like, let me get a little bit of your life so I can, let me latch onto your life so I can escape mine. I'm sure, like, you know, it's like, oh, she had a child that's no longer with her. I think it was a son, wasn't it? It could have been a daughter, but I'm fairly sure it was a son. So her having a son, it probably correlates with, like, almost like she's taking all that motherly stuff and kind of applying it a little bit to Ross, but while also being friendish. But it was like, just like her being around and being like there the entire day. It's like, oh, here's some coffee. Okay. Oh, like, you know, let us help you. And Jenny's like, oh, okay, because her dad's supposed to be going to like an appointment or something, or like he was supposed to be picked up, and Ross went with Kelly to do it. And obviously, like, it was a whole barber thing, and apparently he threw some stuff at somebody because he was like, I'd never get in her chair, because it was like another person he'd going to, but that person retired, and he was like, I'd never get in this person's chair. And then, you know, you have Kelly, it was Ross who kind of volunteered her to cut his hair, and they had this moment, and so I thought that was kind of pretty neat. And then also Jenny comes back and she's like, almost like, what the fuck are you doing in my... It's one of those things of like, and someone that's overstaying their welcome. Like, that's almost the vibe you got, because Jenny was almost like, wait, why are you still here? I think it's that thing of like, you want to kind of say that, like, that's kind of weird that you're still here. But at the same time, it's like, well, we don't... Because honestly, outside of work, we've never really seen... Well, the only other friend of hers we've seen is Sabine. Like, that's... Was it Sabina or Sabina? I think it was Sabina, right? The one that Allison was dating, or is still potentially dating. We get little updates here and there about that, but it's like, we really don't see her have she doesn't have too much of a life outside of work, you know, friendships and stuff like that. So it seems like it's kind of filling that void, while also potentially filling the void, because at one point she calls her Katie and it's like, oh, she's like, Kelly, sorry, Katie was my sister's name. She's like, of course so it's like, I'm sure it's like Kelly's getting something out of this, because once again, it's like, let me deal with your family situation, because I don't have to deal with the family situation of what I lost. And it's like, you're accidentally calling me your sister? Okay, like, you're getting something out of this too. And then, like, you want to think of me, it's like, I'm wondering, is it going to be to the point she eventually starts overstepping her boundaries because she just kind of gets caught up in all of that? So what I'm curious about. And Jenny's in this position where she's like, she's sleepwalking. Obviously her dad's condition's getting worse. He doesn't want to stay at that home anymore, you know. And she's like, yeah, Dad, if you don't want to stay somewhere you don't want to stay. She's like, yeah, I'm just tired. I'm not sleeping. He's like, oh, you're doing that sleepwalking thing again? She's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, you did it sometime after Katie died. Like, you start sleepwalking. So it's like, I guess those are more, so this is research, because it makes sense now. She was doing this after Katie died. Now she's resurfacing all these memories now that she knows the truth. All the stuff that her brain has been trying to protect her from. Like, there's a lot of... I guess the digging is literally like, maybe she dug something, or dug up a ground and buried something when she was younger, and she's trying to get back to that or something. Like, some stuff because everything related to Katie, I'm sure that includes all the trauma that she blocked. All of that is resurfacing, so she's replaying out some stuff from when she was younger, I'm assuming. Maybe that's what... I mean, because the fire from the house, I mean, the first episode, it's like, that kept replaying, and obviously her ending up where she was. Like, maybe the fact that she, you know, maybe it's all the places, like her being in the road, in the refrigerator, all that's in correlation to the original house. Like, maybe there's something there. maybe that's something tied specifically to Katie, like memories tied to her that maybe Jenny's not quite remembering, that, they're manifesting. Like, we don't really 100% know. There's a lot to that I thought was just kind of, fascinating. But, yeah, you have, God, I'm blanking, Kelly volunteering to look after Gordon, because it's like, yeah, like I work like as a waitress like 2 days a week, the other 5 days a week you need me, yeah, I'm here. And she's like, yeah, I love your family. It's like, and it's like, yeah, they seem to love you too. And it's like that, and it's just like, to me, that her saying that almost seemed like it was giving Kelly the cosign. Like I said, I'm probably reading, like I said, I'm looking at this from a very pessimistic point of view. It's probably meant to be a thing of, no, I'm here to help you, Jenny. You're helping me and I'm helping you. But maybe it's that sad thing of, we're not really helping each other. Like, neither one of us is 100%. Like, obviously you got a lot on your plate, and me dealing with the stuff on your plate helps me not deal with my stuff. So it's just like, you're not properly dealing with the issues, which I'm like, yeah, I'm such a hypocrite to talk about it. This coming from someone who buries a lot of shit and doesn't deal with his problem. So it was just kind of an interesting thing. Then there's the whole thing at the end where Liam's getting drunk and dancing. She was saying like, oh yeah, like his friend was in good, and they like Maul was like out, out of the. I don't know whether she was saying that just to make Ross feel better, because obviously they went through the whole thing of like, oh, well, at least Liam was like, oh yeah, it was an accident. Didn't say the true circumstances of what happened to him. So I don't know whether that's like things didn't go well, or maybe they did go well and that was just him, celebrating, and Jeannie's kind of dancing with him and smiling, but then like the smiles on both of them kind of disappear. It's just kind of like, once again, both of them kind of dealing with their traumas and not 100%, like I said, 100% talking about it. So I don't know, interesting stuff. Kind of end things on a more like happier note. Donovan tells Jenny the fact is that he met someone, and it's like, oh, it's from that place at Convert. She was like, it's not a lady named Kelly. It's like, no, Nora. And it's like, oh, well, I'd love to meet Nora one day. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty dope. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. And also I think that shows like their partnership in the sense that like he's opening up about like, oh yeah, I think I've met someone. Like, Jenny hasn't really gotten to that point where she's talking about her love life, the whole Liam situation. She didn't really talk to him about that, but for him to feel open enough to talk about it because he feels good about it, so, and what direction that whole Nora and him situation, what that ends up becoming later on down the road, we'll have to wait and see. But I'm curious to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's so long to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.